Hello everyone, I'm Becky and this is Buttercup and we're here from the Sloth Sanctuary of Costa Rica. Now thank you for joining us today for this Google Hangout. If you have any sloth questions then we're here for the next hour or so to answer and hopefully Buttercup will help us. Now if you love sloths, which I'm sure you all do, which is why you're watching this, be sure to tune in to Meet the Sloths tomorrow morning, which starts on Animal Planet at 11 AM in the US. And on the 14th of November on Animal Planet UK. And you will learn all about us here at the Sloth Sanctuary and Buttercup, and I'm sure you'll love it. Well, I hope you will. If you have any sloth questions, again, just send them over and I'm here to ask. Here at the Sloth Sanctuary, we have about 150 sloths at the moment. Most of them are two-fingered, but we do have some three-fingered sloths like Buttercup. She was actually the first sloth ever to be raised in captivity, and she's 21 years old now, which makes her the oldest sloth in the world. We don't actually know how long three-fingered sloths like Buttercup live for, so she's setting the record, which is quite exciting. I work here as a biologist, so I research sloths. You might be surprised to know that we actually know very little about them. They're one of the weirdest mammals on the planet, and nothing they do fits in with what we'd expect them to do. So it's quite a learning curve. Buttercup's taught me an awful lot. And a lot of the things that we've been doing in the last 12 months are going to be shown on Meet the Sloths. So if you're interested in sloth research or you fancy getting into working with sloths, then be sure to watch and you'll learn a lot, I'm sure. Now, I've got my first questions through. Tracy asks, are they as friendly as they appear? Well, Buttercup certainly appears friendly, doesn't she? She loves people. In fact, she's happiest when she's with people. She lives upstairs in a basket, and as soon as people come near, she'll reach out to them, and she really just wants to be carried around. But sloths are wild animals, so hand-reared sloths like Buttercup and a lot of the animals here at the sanctuary are very friendly, and they do love to be cuddled, and they do love human attention. But sloths in the wild really would rather we left them alone. Two-fingered sloths do have giant teeth, and they are classed as dangerous animals, so I could never handle a wild two-fingered sloth. It would probably bite me. And three-fingered sloths do have these big fingers, which they will use to defend themselves. So, yeah, the wild ones aren't as friendly as captive sloths, but she's an exception. She loves people. Smiles says, have you had sloths die from grabbing their arms and thinking it was a tree branch? Well, you'll be amazed. We get asked that question an awful lot at the Sloth Sanctuary. It's probably one of the biggest myths about them. But sloths are actually very, very intelligent, and they can tell very well what's a tree branch and what's their arm. They're very careful, and before they grab hold of any branch, they'll always smell it to make sure that it's not rotten and to make sure that it'll take their weight. So they'd never grab onto their own arm. When they're very young and when they're tiny babies and we're teaching them to climb, they can get a little bit confused about what's their legs and what's a tree branch, but they never fall. A sloth's very careful. It'll always keep one hand grabbing onto a tree branch, and it'll never let go with all four. So they very rarely fall. Usually when they fall, it's because they're fighting, or because the actual branch breaks, maybe in a storm or something. But they're also very resilient to falls because two-fingered sloths have more ribs than any other mammal. They've got 46 pairs of ribs. And that acts like a bit like a wicker basket, so they can fall out of maybe a 90-foot tree and they actually just bounce and they can climb back up the tree. So they are very resilient to falls. Now, Amy says, how did you get to work with them? That's my absolute dream. Well, I'm glad to say it's my dream too. I never planned on working with sloths, that's for sure. I kind of fell into it. I did always have an interest in them, and I was always interested in tropical biology. But obviously, you can never plan to have a career studying sloths. I was studying through the University of Manchester in the UK, and I was doing a degree in zoology because I was obviously very interested in animals. And I spent some time in Ecuador, and I saw some sloths in the wild there, and they really fascinated me, and I looked into their biology a little bit and found out that we really didn't know anything about them. And then purely by chance that year, a research placement was offered through my university here at the sanctuary. And lots of people applied, but nobody really knew anything about sloths. And because I had read some papers and I had a bit of a background, I applied and I got the placement, which was a bit of a shock to me. I didn't expect that, but it happened, and it went really well in the end. I did the first in-depth study of captive sloth biology, and we found out some really interesting things. And from there, it's led to me doing my PhD back here at the sanctuary. And now I'm working with wild sloths, which is incredible. I mean, no 2 days are the same. But I definitely never planned on having this career. The stars lined up, as I like to say, and it went really well. Obscure Chan says, do sloths usually bite? Not usually. Well, a wild sloth will always try to bite you. If you try to pick it up or give it a cuddle, they just want to be left alone, and they can be quite scared of humans, as any wild animal would be. And one of their defenses is to bite, particularly the two-fingered sloths, and they will at any opportunity try to give you a nibble. But captive sloths, they know the difference between a human and a brown shore, their food, and they won't bite you unless you're threatening them, or maybe they don't know you. They might bite you if they don't know you. But certainly buttercups never tried to bite anyone. In fact, three-fingered sloths don't have any front teeth. They only have pegs at the back of their mouth that they use to grind the leaves. So even if she tried to bite me, she couldn't. I'd have to probably stick my finger in her mouth to make her bite me, which I'm not sure she'd do anyway. But two-fingered sloths have what we call pseudo-canines, which are maybe an inch long, and they're at the front of their mouth, and they're actually classed as dangerous animals in a lot of zoos because they can bite, and our veterinarian's been bitten before, and it's not a pretty sight. But sloths, for the most part, they're very gentle. They'll never go after a human. They'll never try to attack you unless you're invading their space and you're threatening them. So that's just their method of defense, really. They don't have many methods of defense, as you can see. Buttercup's fingers aren't sharp. They're very blunt. These are just her finger bones, and she'll just use them to squeeze. And she'll never slash. And I know on the internet it says that they can gouge your eyes out with their razor-sharp claws, but they can't. They're very gentle. This is just their fingers, like our fingers. Katie says, what does it feel like to hug a sloth? Well, Buttercup's quite heavy right now. She's not been to the bathroom for a week. You probably know sloths only poo and pee once a week. So at the moment, she's weighing about 5 kilograms. But there's no feeling like holding a sloth. I can't condone it because it's not great for animals, particularly wild animals, to be held like this, but Buttercup's the exception. She loves people and she loves to be held. This is her favorite thing, so it is very special. She's hugging me back. She's holding my thumb. I'm not holding her. And she's got her other arm around my shoulders. It's lovely. Her little tail's digging into me. Three-fingered sloths have maybe a 3-inch tail, and they use it as a brace when they're climbing up big trees. It helps them not slip downwards. And they also use it when they go to the bathroom to dig a hole when they come down from the tree. But she's digging that into me now. It's quite painful, but it's worth it. Philippa asks, will there be lots of sloths from your sanctuary on Meet the Sloths show? Yes, there definitely will be. Meet the Sloths actually follows or focuses on 5 of our resident sloths of the 150. And it follows their lives here. They're all, well, most of them are orphaned and are here for the rest of their lives because we can't release 100 orphans into the wild and they don't know how to survive. So it follows their day-to-day dramas, how they interact with each other. It's a bit like a little soap opera, and that's genuinely how it is here. Certain sloths get on with others, and they all have different preferences. So it's very charming, and it's quite light-hearted. And we also go and bust some sloth myths. So we have a look at how sloths can swim, and we look at their digestion, which is by far the slowest of any mammal. And we look at their speed as well, because although they move quite slowly now, when they need to move fast, sloths can turn on the speed. So we document that for the first time. A lot of people, well, it's been said and it's been published actually that sloths can't move more than 12 inches in a minute, which isn't true at all. They can do much faster than that. And if you want to know just how fast they can move, then you have to tune in to Meet the Sloths, and you need to see it for yourself. But yeah, if there's any more questions, send them through. Buttercup's here, she can demonstrate things. If I hold her up, you can see her. See her full size here and her tail. And she loves this. She's holding onto me here, and I'm not holding onto her. So this is a bit like how they climb in the tree. But yeah, here at the sanctuary we probably have about 17 three-fingered sloths, and we have about 120 two-fingered. So there is a big difference in sloth numbers, and we don't know why that is, and that's one of the things that I'm trying to find out. One of the many things. If anybody's interested in getting into sloth research, then please do, because there's more than enough things that we need to know. We could do with a whole army of sloth researchers to come and find it all out. It's pretty unknown about. We don't even know what sloths eat in the wild. We're trying to document it so that we can get hand-reared orphans back out into the wild, which is a challenge in itself when you don't know anything about an animal. And so their home ranges, all these things, we don't know. Sloths are masters of camouflage, so if Buttercup was to climb into a tree, she'd disappear. You wouldn't be able to see she was there. They act like a tree because they're so slow. They smell like a tree because they don't produce any body odor. And actually all of their hairs are folded in half, and that's to allow algae to grow down the center of each hair. So in the wild they look almost green, so they look like a tree, they smell like a tree, and they act like a tree. In the wild they'll also host an entire ecosystem of insects. So a sloth like Buttercup might have nearly 300 moths on her fur, and they don't cause the sloth any problems. Just grabbing onto the mirror behind me. They don't cause the sloth any problems. They just live on the fur, and we find out why they have those moths in Meet the Sloths as well. So that's another one of our science studies that we go and investigate. It's very interesting, actually. It's very interesting. We've got another question through. Jeff asks, what do they smell like? Do they give kisses? And do they return affection like a cat or a dog? Well, they smell like nothing really. They smell a little bit musty, but it's a nice smell. I mean, again, they produce no body odor. Sloths don't sweat. They can't control their body temperature at all, which is another very interesting fact. But so she just smells a bit like you'd expect, just a bit animally, but nothing, no distinct smell. Wild males will actually smell quite strongly sometimes. They have a back patch, so if Buttercup was a boy, right here on her back would be a big orange patch, and that would be very oily. It's like a coloured secretion that comes out, and we think it's something to do with testosterone, and it smells, it can smell quite strongly, but she doesn't have the algae, so she doesn't smell like algae either. Do they give kisses? Three-fingered sloths don't. She'll never give kisses. They don't ever stick their tongues out, really. They don't drink water. They get all their water from the leaves. So she'll smell me. That's what she does when she meets anybody. She'll grab their hand and give them a smell to check who they are. Two-fingered sloths will give kisses. They're quite different animals. They're as different as a cat and a dog. But they love to give you kisses. They like the soles off the skin. So they'll grab you and especially the babies, they'll give lots of kisses. But you have to be careful that they don't decide to taste your finger and give you a little nip at the same time, which they're also quite fond of doing. And do they return affection like a cat or a dog? Well, I'd say Buttercup does. She's, again, one of the most friendly sloths that we have. She loves people, and she'll reach out for you, and she'll hold onto your hand, she'll sit on your knee, and she won't want to go back. If I walk back near her basket now, she'll squeeze tightly onto me because she doesn't want me to put her back. And I think that's affectionate. Two-fingered sloths will give you kisses, as I said, but again, they're wild animals. They've never been domesticated, and these are just hand-reared animals. And so they don't bond with humans like a cat or a dog would. It's just, they're all different as well. They all have really individual personalities. And I think that's something that really does come across on Meet the Sloths. They all have their individual preferences, and they really are little characters. And again, that's the same in the wild. From my work with wild sloths, I've noticed they're all a little bit different. Some don't mind humans so much. Some really don't want you around them. Some are feisty. Some are just chilling out. They couldn't really care less. They're all individuals, and you can tell who they all are. They've all got their unique little faces. So, got some more questions come through. What is their lifespan? They are so cute. From Jody. Yes, they are so cute. And I think this gets them into trouble quite a lot. You can see Buttercup smiling. Now, sloths and dolphins are the only animals in the world who constantly smile. But I think it gives them the illusion of constantly being happy as well. And I can guarantee when a sloth's being electrocuted or run over, or many of the other things that brings them here to the sanctuary, they're not happy even though they look like they are. So we do have to be careful with that one. They live, three-fingered sloths we don't know. Buttercup was the first to ever be raised in captivity. And so she's setting the record. She's 21 now, and she's perfectly healthy. She might live until she's 30, or she might live until she's 100. I have a sneaky suspicion they live quite a long time. They're slow, a little bit like tortoises, and they live for hundreds of years. So you never know. I'm hoping so. Two-fingered sloths are found in zoos, and they have been for a long time, and their lifespan can be up to 40 years, which is quite a long time for a mammal. And yeah, the oldest one we have here is probably about around 20 years old, two-fingered sloth. So yeah, we've still got a lot of finding out about that to do. The sanctuary's only been here since 1990, so it's a work in progress. Now, as I said about sloths being run over and electrocuted, it is a big problem here in Costa Rica, and that's what the sanctuary does. They deal with not only injured and orphan sloths, but also adults who come in with serious problems. Obviously, when they're alone in the rainforest and there's no humans around, then they have very few problems. They don't have very many predators, and so they live perfectly well. But where humans come into the picture, they struggle to adapt. Sloths are very specific in their territories, and so if maybe a road gets built between two of their favourite trees, a sloth will always cross the road to get to the other side of its habitat. It can't just cut that out. So we get a lot of sloths who are run over, or if there's a power line running along the side of the road, they'll always climb on the power line because it's a bit like a highway to where they want to go. And they get electrocuted an awful lot. And where there's people, there's dogs. So I'd say about 30% of the sloths that arrive here have been attacked by dogs. And they're very tough, so they can survive through a hell of a lot. A lot of our orphans are here because their mothers have been killed by dogs. And an orphan mother will wrap herself in a ball around her baby and protect it. So a lot of the times the mother might have been killed, but the baby's okay. And we get some who have simply just been abused by humans. They're called sloths, which is a deadly sin. And in a lot of places around the world where it's quite religious, a lot of people think that sloths are actually the devil's animal. And they'll beat them with sticks or play football with them, set them on fire, run them over on purpose. A lot of really nasty things. We have a sloth here called Oprah who features in the series, and her mom was stoned to death by some boys. And thankfully she protected her baby enough that we managed to rescue her and bring her here, and now she's absolutely fine. But she had quite a traumatic start to life. And we actually this week we had a rescue of 2 sloths. I had to go and rescue them, which was unexpected, but we got a call that said that they'd been electrocuted. Well, in fact, it was just one sloth at first. They said there's been an electrocution. The power had gone out because of it, so it was quite a severe one. And we drove out there, and we found this poor two-fingered sloth who'd touched the power lines and been burnt so severely that it had burnt her eyes closed, so she couldn't see anything. She'd apparently been unconscious on the floor for a few minutes after the shock, and had then climbed back up into a nearby tree. She'd burnt through the flesh on her arm, and her hand was all raw. Her face was just burnt off. It was really quite nasty, but she was doing well, and we anaesthetised her, and we brought her back here, and now she's doing really, really well. We've put some burn cream on her injuries, and she's healing already. Her eyes have opened, and she's doing really well. But it's kind of the reality of what we do here is it's very cute and cuddly, like with Buttercup, but it can also be very serious. And that's what we face on a weekly basis. As we rescued that sloth, there was also another one who'd climbed up the same telephone wire and was sat on top of an electricity box. And it was inches away from electrocuting itself. And so before that happened, we decided to relocate him. Here at the sanctuary, we have a protected reserve. So we collected him and we've brought him back here. And those two sloths are now called Jack and Jill, because they were found in exactly the same area, and the female's actually pregnant, as we found out yesterday with an x-ray. The baby's still very small, and she hasn't miscarried, which is great news. And hopefully she heals just fine, and we can put her back out in the forest with Jack. They can go and play happy families. But if you guys want to subscribe to the channel, and you can get updates on the Sloth Sanctuary and on Meet the Sloths, transmission times, all of those things. Don't forget to subscribe. The button's below here somewhere. And you can find out all the updates about Meet the Sloths. And also we're running some competitions to win some signed merchandise from us here at the Sanctuary. And you can enter the competitions there as well. If you have any more questions about sloths, anything at all, just send them through. I'm here for a few more minutes with Buttercup, so we'll be more than happy to answer. She's looking very curiously at the computer. She's probably wondering where all the people are, who am I talking to? That's to impress you all. But here's something that a lot of people don't know, is that all sloths, like Buttercup here, I don't know if you can see, have 3 toes. So yes, she's called a 3-toed sloth, but 2-toed sloths also have 3 toes. They just have 2 fingers. So when you've heard me throughout this and throughout Meet the Sloths as well, which is on tomorrow morning, don't forget, 11 AM, we refer to them as 2-fingered and 3-fingered, and that's why, because all sloths have 3 toes. The happy sloth is asked a question. How much does a sloth weigh? Like, how heavy is Buttercup? Okay, well, 3-fingered sloths, they usually weigh between 3 and 4 kilograms. It can go up to 5 kilograms. When a sloth goes poo and pee, which is only once a week, you can imagine they lose an awful lot of their body weight during that time. In fact, they can lose up to 1/3 of their body weight in one sitting, which is an enormous amount. And if you ever get a chance to see a sloth go to the bathroom, you can see them visibly shrinking in size. And so right now, Buttercup probably weighs nearer to 5 kilograms. She's not been to the bathroom in a while. But on average, it's between 3 and 4. 2-fingered sloths can be quite a lot heavier. They're larger. They can weigh up to 8 kilograms, sometimes 9 kilograms, depending on their age and things. Males tend to be a little bit bigger than females, but it really nothing major. It's just individual differences. And when the babies come in, the babies are actually, if I can show you, they fit in the size of my palm, and they tend to weigh, at newborn, between 200 and 300 grams. So they're really small when they're born. But they are born fully formed. They have their fingers ready to go, their claws, and their eyes are open, they have teeth. And they really are like fully formed miniature versions of Buttercup when they come out. And they're very resilient. They can go through an awful lot and still survive. We've had babies arrive who've been on the ground for maybe a week or 10 days without their mom, and they come in and they can still survive after all of that in the cold and the rain. Sloths can't control their body temperature very well, so we have to be really careful with them here at the sanctuary that we make sure they have access to the direct sunshine so they can warm themselves up, but also access to shade so that they can move out of the sunlight when it's the hottest time of the day. They're very unusual in the fact that they can't control their body temperature, and that's also why they don't make good pets, especially the three-fingered sloths. Unless you're prepared to have your house at 80 degrees constantly, then a sloth's not the right pet for you or anybody. Now, Multi First Edition is asking, what is their biggest predator? Back in the day, and I'm talking hundreds of years ago, their biggest predator was probably jaguars and harpy eagles, sometimes snakes, ocelots, generally just the big cats and the birds. But none of those really exist in this region anymore. There's still some harpy eagles around Panama and in the Amazon, but not a significant amount to cause a problem to the sloth populations. So they don't really have any predators, except for humans. We're by far their biggest threat. We're causing the sloth populations a lot of problems, and they cannot adapt very well to humans being around at all. They, as I mentioned before, cross roads and they'll electrocute themselves and get attacked by dogs and all those horrible things. And we really are driving them to extinction at the moment. We probably get on average one baby sloth a week brought into the sanctuary, and on top of that we get adults who arrive who are injured. And so it is quite serious. And I'll meet the sloths when that hits Animal Planet this week. We film a lot of sloth rescues. We've got some sad stories as well as some emotional, successful stories where we've rescued animals and they've got better and we've released them back into the wild. And also, it's very charming, so I do suggest you tune in and watch. Claire asks, will Buttercup be in the show? Is she really a ballerina? Now, sloths, they kind of are ballerinas in the trees. They're very acrobatic, they're amazingly flexible, they're a little bit like slow motion Tai Chi, and she can do some amazing tricks on her basket. And yes, she's in the show, and all of her tricks are also in the show. And you can see it all if you tune in tomorrow. If you can see a sloth in the wild, then they're a lot more acrobatic than Buttercup. When they've grown up in the wild and that's where they've got used to living, then they can perform all sorts of tricks up in the trees. They can hang from one toe from the top of a 100-meter tree and scratch their heads. The tree can be swaying in the wind and all sorts. It's amazing. They're incredibly talented at living in the trees. But if you ever get a chance to see one in the water, they're also just as good in the water as they are in the trees. Sloths are amazing swimmers, and that's also something we explore on the show. We've discovered just how amazing they are. They might look quite clumsy on the ground, but they're wonderful in the trees. Sorry for not getting to all those questions. You can keep them coming on Meet the Sloths on Twitter, and I'll try and answer some if you have any special ones. If you send them through, I'll try and give you a personal answer. But thank you for joining us for this hangout, and please don't forget to tune into the show tomorrow. We're all really excited to see it, and we hope you enjoy it. Please give us your feedback. If you enjoy it, let us know. And if you can come to the sanctuary one day and visit, then Buttercup would be more than happy to meet and greet you in person. So we hope to see you here one day. And we hope you enjoy the show. 11 a.m. tomorrow morning, Animal Planet. Bye.